Drew Yancey is the president and COO of Incite Performance Group in Fort Collins, and the LoCo Facilitator for a pair of LoCo Next Level chapters. This is Drew's second time on the podcast, and the first was with his father, Greg Yancey. That episode was focused on the Yancey's food service business journey, which Drew played a large part in. Drew is also the author of a new book, his third, with co-author Larry Linne, Leading Performance Because It Can't Be Managed. In this episode, Drew shares more about his journey and his why as he navigated his early career and the time after exiting the Yancey family businesses, and especially about his various engagements with and appreciation for peer advisory. Drew has been involved with numerous industry-specific and industry-diverse peer advisory organizations and shares some of the pluses and minuses of each, and more about his why in joining the team of LoCo Facilitators in Northern Colorado. We also unfold principles from his new book, with the theme of helping leaders help their team find the work style and environment in which they can thrive. Drew is an amazing servant to the Northern Colorado business community, and we're so glad to have him supporting so many next-level business leaders. And he's an awesome person, so tune in and get to know better one of my favorite people, Drew Yancey.
Let's have some fun.
Welcome to the LoCo Experience Podcast. On this show, you'll get to know business and community leaders from all around Northern Colorado and beyond. Our guests share their stories, business stories, life stories, stories of triumph and of tragedy, and through it all, you'll be inspired and entertained. These conversations are real and raw, and no topics are off limits. So pop in a breath mint and get ready to meet our latest guest. Welcome back to the LoCo Experience Podcast. My guest today is Drew Yancey, and Drew's a second-time guest. He is the facilitator for two of our LoCo Next Level chapters. He's also the president of Incite Performance Group and a two-time author, one Transforming Enterprise at the Intersection of Evangelism, Capitalism, and Practical Theology, and the second that just came out, Leading Performance Because It Can't Be Managed. So, Drew, great to have you here. Thanks for doing all the good things.
Kurt, thanks so much for having me. I already know there's many listeners who think that you completely made up the title for that first book. So,
well,
I'm sure we'll circle back
more
to that.
accurately. What is that first title? Do you remember it?
You asked me, and I had to remember. So it's Transforming Enterprise with a question mark. American Evangelicalism, Capitalism, and the Challenge of Practical Theology.
Yeah.
And this was a byproduct of my PhD dissertation.
Oh, so. It was a book you had to write.
Yeah, as those who have
already
gone through the process will know, it writing a dissertation is not the same as writing a book. You have to do a lot of editing typically to make it book ready. Yeah. But the core was there.
So you have a for real PhD. Is that like you never asked me to call you doctor? Like
no, and if you do call me Dr. Drew in particular, I will be offended. So.
You have just as much talent as Dr. Drew, I promise you. Maybe more.
Oh man, and we're off.
And we're going. This is all live here, baby.
This is what I fully expected.
Well, Drew, of course, is drinking bubble water because he's got like responsible things to do after this. But yes. I'll keep our listeners entertained with my mezcal sipping in the background. So, Drew, we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. You were on with your father, Greg, for I think episode 8 or something like that.
That was a privilege.
A long time ago. And we really focused on the journey of the Yancey Foods and that business and the exit and things, and kind of left a big hole in, telling the community who Drew Yancey is and what he's up to and why in the world would he want to be a facilitator with LoCo Think Tank?
Yeah.
So can we start there?
Yeah. And as I think about this, Kurt, it's perfect that to the degree that anyone cares about the question you just asked, anyone else at least, that we did start with that foundation, because it's impossible for me to tell you anything about who I am, or to say anything about why I'm so passionate about LoCo and these next level groups without understanding where I came from. And as you know, we were discussing in that first podcast, as a fourth generation business owner, my story started well before I was born.
Right.
And we talked about that. So I'll just encourage people to go back to the old days and try to track down that episode if they want to learn more about that history.
Fair. Well, and I guess, tell me about, I guess, your heart for community. I mean, I know you love business. I know you love just enterprise. You love people. Like, you've got this interesting mix of faith and business that's kind of woven through your whole career.
Yeah.
Was that a faith kind of a question? I remember when you called me, you were like, I think I might want to do this.
Yeah. I would say that community is one of my personal core values for sure. And that it stems from partly my convictions around faith and my faith and spiritual journey. Absolutely. You were asking about Next Level and involvement with LoCo Think Tank, and for those that might not know the definition there,
we might want to define that.
Yeah, within Next Level or within LoCo, this group emerged several years ago, right? Where how do you often talk about it? Too big.
Too small to be big and too big to be small.
There you go. Yeah. And this really was a reflection, in my experience, of some trend lines within the Northern Colorado business community that have been transpiring over the last decade at least. We are getting larger, more sophisticated, more established businesses in a variety of different industries. When our business was at its moment in time, there were maybe on one hand I could count the types of entrepreneurs. Yeah,
the other
business owners,
8-9 figure kind of revenue companies.
Yeah, exactly. And now it seems like you and I every day are running into relatively new people to the community that have just built amazing businesses.
Yeah, and we both meet a lot of people that brought their successful business here, sometimes out of Denver, sometimes out of another state or something, and then they just really took off here and became a part of the community and found the kind of employees that they're looking for and the kind of innovation community. Yeah. So it has been super exciting for me. My banking career was gone before it really started. Yeah. The sauce was really poured on, but it really feels vibrant right now.
Well, what you just said is interesting because that's a large part of why I feel so strongly about giving back to the Northern Colorado business community, because our family story was almost the opposite in that we were a food distribution business, a logistics company, and most of our clientele, most of our customer base was outside of Northern Colorado by the time that we got to be our large size. By probably the early to mid 90s, it made more sense financially and operationally for us to move our business from Northern Colorado to Denver, the I-70, I-25 corridor.
Right.
Till the day that we ended up selling our business, we never moved out of Northern Colorado, and that was for a very specific purpose. We really valued the business community here. And so,
the community of your employees and stuff, as I remember it, like they were so important for your family and an integral part, kind of.
Yeah, and that feeds into everything that I am privileged to be a part of with Next Level chapters and working with these business owners is in a lot of ways I want them to experience what we experience as a family, and I hope their experience is that much bigger.
Right. Can we kind of define Next Level a little bit, or is that something I should set the stage a little bit more with?
Go ahead.
But Next Level is really the next level size of what we'd been doing at LoCo Think Tank going back to 2014. We're going to turn 9 next week, and about 5 years in, several of our members had grown enough so they weren't really with their peers anymore. They were at that next level. And so we started a next level chapter, found some other larger operators, and then in April 2 years ago, we started Next Level 2. And so along the way, you took over Next Level 1 chapter, got bored, want to do some more work, and said we should start another one. You weren't bored?
I was so excited by it. I said, let's do another.
Fair. That's actually more accurate.
Yes.
And so now we have 2 chapters strong of 11 or 12 members.
Yep.
And
been maxed out now for over a year in terms of capacity. We are referral only. If a seat opens up, it gets filled really quickly.
That doesn't mean I won't call on you if I know you're already pretty cool.
That's
but we get a lot of names, and it's been a lot of fun. So, and how does you've been involved with other peer advisory organizations along the career journey?
Yeah.
How would you differentiate like what we're doing here with LoCo against maybe some of the other models you've seen? Similarities and differences, if you can.
Yeah, it's a question that I get asked relatively frequently, especially if I'm interviewing a potential new candidate for Next Level. I am a self-described, full disclosure peer group junkie. Okay, what I mean by that is going back to the beginnings of my own career, where I was involved in a industry peer group.
Okay.
All the way to today, there has never been a point of time in my career where I haven't been involved in and or leading a peer group of one shape or form. And there's, in my experience, there's no one right or wrong way to do a peer group. There's probably some productive and unproductive ways. Yeah. But it's really about fit. Yeah. And, the 2 basic types that are out there, we could differentiate along the lines of, are they an industry-specific group or a non-industry group?
Fair.
I've spent the majority of my career in the advising space, working with a variety of different industries.
Right. And in the distribution space, in the insurance space with Incite.
Yep, and I spent several years in corporate strategy consulting, working with Fortune 500s, and on any given week we were working with a financial services firm or a manufacturer or a tech company or name your industry. So in my field of specialty, which is innovation strategy, having diverse points of view is absolutely critical to driving new value. So on the one hand, I look at multiple industry groups like we have at Next Level and see tremendous value. But as I often tell our Next Level members, it's not an either or. Because when I was running a food distribution company, there were certain things about our operation that were very specific.
Those other folks just understood.
Yes. Yeah. So I was also involved across the country. We were actually part of launching the first of its kind, an association for our industry that offered training and development and peer groups for a lot of these businesses that were our peers.
Yeah, cool. I didn't know about that part of the story, really.
Yeah.
And so from a diversity standpoint, it's really about that clarity that sometimes come with fresh eyes.
Yeah. There was a study done a couple years ago that was asking a question around how much knowledge is almost too much knowledge about a problem to inhibit outside the box thinking.
Okay.
So this group of researchers got 3 different groups together of people: warehouse workers, carpenters, and recreational rollerbladers.
Okay.
Always wondered about that third group. I just love to see them.
Yeah. How do you find them?
How do you find them? What do they look like? So anyways, they gave each group the same task. Number 1, come up with ways to improve the safety equipment in your own field. Okay. There's a common problem among all 3 of these groups that safety equipment for their field was not readily worn and used because it was uncomfortable.
Right.
We ran into this problem all the time with our warehouse workers and food distribution. All this safety equipment that inhibited their flow of work.
Yeah.
They also assigned each group a second task: come up with ideas for ways to improve the safety equipment of one of the other randomly assigned groups.
Okay.
They pulled together all the responses, and they had a panel of experts in each of these fields. Again, who sits on a panel of expertise in rollerblading safety equipment? I don't know, but it exists.
Yeah.
And these experts ranked the recommendations.
Okay.
Every single group was categorically better at coming up with ideas on one of the other groups.
Right.
And the researchers theorized that what we have going on here is that each group knew just enough about the other group to identify with the problem, but they didn't suffer from what we call the curse of knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? That whole idea of, well, I can't do it this way because that's not how we do it in this industry.
Yeah.
Or that's not how we did it in the past. So, whether we're talking about a peer group or whether we're just talking about problem solving
Right.
in everyday...
Getting out of a bad habit.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
In everyday work environments, you want to have a balance. And no surprise that there's just this truckload of research and data that suggests and shows that more diverse teams tend to produce more innovative outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to get back. I'm going to jump in the time machine a little bit because we did focus so much on the Yancey company journey. I want to learn about young Drew. Were you always just like a business nerd, like as a teen or as a elementary school student? Were you outgoing? Were you studious? Were you in the chorus, in the band? What was your character? We didn't really have time to delve into that.
I think you got 1 out of 3 right there. I was not in the band. Was not particularly outgoing. Very studious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Growing up in a family business, inherently I was immersed in business. And I look back on it and am so appreciative of the way that I was immersed, starting at the ground floor. And
sweeping, I think.
Yes. My dad and I shared with you some stories in that first podcast. So that shaped my appreciation for and understanding of the value of approaching business and growth in the right way. But I also grew up not just in a multi-generational family business, but a multi-generational family of faith.
Yeah.
And so the Christian faith, the Christian community, what I would consider deep questions of life.
Yeah. Yeah. Why are we here? Like
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
We can talk about that later.
We're also a part of my experience, and that's why I eventually studied philosophy of religion as my undergrad.
Yeah.
I have a graduate degree in theology and my PhD's in religion. So,
yeah. And in between, did you get some business studies as well?
I did.
Or was that all on the job?
Both.
Okay.
I did get my MBA when I returned to my family business full time, precisely because I didn't have that foundation with a business undergrad. And an MBA is helpful in building a foundation. It's helpful in honing in an expertise, but devoid of real life experience, no degree is going to be of ultimate value. So it was both the training in the business world, and then in the classroom.
And the start of your business career was really kind of coming back to the family business after your MBA, and kind of a place where they were positioning to sell or thinking about selling. What was that? Can you describe that setting and how you were involved in that, and how do you learn?
Yeah. I came back right after graduate school. My wife and I had gotten engaged. We had met while I was in graduate school. And the original plan was we were going to go right into a doctorate program.
Oh, wow.
And my dream for many years was to go and get my doctorate at Oxford.
Oh,
Oxford is a place renowned for many things, one of which is the study of theology.
yeah.
And I had a unique opportunity to study there as an undergrad in an exchange program, and that was a dream. If I was going to pursue doctoral studies in the field of theology and religion, I would go to Oxford. So I actually had applied and had gotten an initial acceptance, and then it was kind of one of those moments in life where the second we got engaged, my belief is God just sort of moved in our life to say, not now.
Not yet.
Not yet. This is a good time to come back to the family business, which I knew I would eventually do.
Yeah.
So we came back, and it's set in motion. That's how I would describe it, Kurt. A 5 to 6 year process where we began to really explore what is the best pathway for our business to get to that, use a pun here, next level of growth.
Yeah.
And that did result eventually in us partnering, selling a large portion of our business.
Yeah. Was one of the options on the table like Drew's going to take it over and keep growing it kind of thing?
Yeah, certainly. I think that was definitely the frame of mind, and not just myself, but I have an amazing one sibling, a sister, Gwen.
Okay.
We grew up in the family business together, and she was deeply involved in the business as well, remarkably skilled and gifted in the business, and we were both certainly open to that. But it was also the case that at that time, this was a large business, and
large, low margin.
Yeah, and we knew that the pathway to growth was going to have to look different than what got us to that point.
Yeah. Have to have that location down at 270 and
that's right,
whatever,
I-70, I-25.
Something like that, and just wouldn't be the business that you wanted. So you navigated this kind of series, found a partner in U.S. Foods. They acquired a good portion.
Different company
not
but was eventually acquired by U.S. Foods.
Oh, I see. So you merged with or whatever
Yep.
with a different company that then was acquired by U.S. Foods.
Exactly.
Okay, I had my recollection wrong on that. But then there was
Shame
a spin-off.
on you for not knowing the
your whole journey
of the food distribution industry.
But you ran a spin-off from that?
Yeah, it was a unique situation. We had carved out a piece of the business that we wanted to retain, and so what ended up happening is my dad transitioned as the branch president for this company that had acquired us, and then I took over a piece that we had that we wanted to keep, and basically had an opportunity to sort of restart.
Okay.
And it was a really unique opportunity. I think we went into this a little bit in the original or the first podcast. It turned into a very crisis-ridden situation.
Yeah.
And there's not a week that I don't draw from that experience.
Oh, there was government shutdowns and stuff involved. We're looming into that lens right now.
We are. Just put it on the calendar every year. Every year.
Debt ceiling.
And it's not like there aren't, human lives on the other end somewhere
right.
that are depending on decisions to be made. I was one of them.
Fair enough. And how did you come to? Because I remember you went to Chicago for a while or something, and served with a kind of a boutique consultancy. And then how did you connect with Incite?
Yeah.
And what was that an established organization that hired you in? Tell me about that story a little bit.
Couple of twists and turns as every career journey has. So the business that we carved out, I ran that for about 5 years, and it started off at a high. Entire revenue was shut off overnight by the U.S. government as a contractor. And so for a couple of years there, we were in this period of rebuilding the business.
Okay.
And by God's grace and an incredible team and mentors that I had in my life, we ended it 2.5 times more profitable than when we began. So we ended up selling off that piece of the business, and then I took some time off, finished up my PhD.
Okay.
And
that was at Oxford then, or did you go back?
No, I ended up.
didn't go.
I stayed in the UK.
Okay.
Went to a program in the UK, University of Birmingham, but my topic had shifted, and I was now really interested in the intersection of religious ethics and business ethics, primarily because of my lived experience.
Yeah.
And
let's linger here for a while. Like, let's take some lessons from that. Like, what are the big pillars of that connection between capitalism and evangelism, if you will?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say evangelism
or Christianity,
religion in general.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. Oh man, so many things we could go here with.
I mean, I'm sure you wrote a whole PhD or a dissertation about it, but
yeah.
I mean, I guess in general, broad strokes, like,
first thing I would say is,
how does the Christian ethic inform the capitalistic ethic? Even
the first thing I would want to challenge is this assumption that most people probably have in their minds, even if they've never thought about it, that we're talking about two very different worlds, right? Religion and business. And in a lot of ways, that is an assumption that has been centuries in the making. Certain trend lines that have taken place over the last couple of hundred years, where we've seen this gradual, what we might call secularization in the Western world in particular. But if we were to reframe the practice of religion as ultimately the practice of certain values, then I think we'd see that in a lot of ways, the way that capitalism functions today actually has some religious undertones to it. In things like how much time and energy and sacrifice a lot of us spend in our work.
Sure.
The degree to which we attach our personal identities to our work. Going up a bit, rising up to thinking it at a social level. Business holds a lot of sway and power and influence, and the pursuit and desire of money is something that holds a lot of grip on a lot of people, myself
for sure.
included.
Well, we all need money in some fashion.
Yeah.
And like, if we all were pastors, who would donate to the church, you know, or whatever, right? We have to do things that add value to one another.
Yeah, and I'm someone who, if you press me for a short answer, I'm going to resist giving you one on, is capitalism good or bad?
Yeah.
Are Christianity and capitalism aligned, or are they not? I don't think those are questions that are possible to be answered in a headline. But I would say this. Capitalism is an incredible idea, and it has produced an undeniable benefit to the global human experience.
Living standards globally, for sure.
But and one of the things I explore in my book is asking the question, are there excesses? Are there ways in which the good of capitalism has been overdone? And I'm of the opinion that pretty easy to look around the world and see where that can be the case. And so what does that mean? Well, that means that particularly for people that are leading businesses and entrepreneurs, they hold potential value to our world in remarkable ways. It's a high calling that has an enormous responsibility.
Yeah. And it's a lonely place. That's part of why members sign up for these think tank chapters. That's
right.
A lot of times, most all of us want to do right.
Yep.
But wanting to do right by your household, your spouse, your family is a significant burden. Yep. And wanting to do right by yourself, your spouse, your household, and the 87 employees that you have that work for you, and the significant leader that's been with you for 6 years but has really gone off the rails in terms of their performance lately, what is the right thing there?
Yeah.
Are you doing right by that relationship? Are you a steward for your business and have to protect that business interest?
Yeah.
A lot of ethics in business across the board.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that loneliness component is huge. You see that all the time in people you talk to, right? And that's a big part of why LoCo exists. I've come to experience and see, just having worked with such a range of different companies and leaders, small startups, 1 or 2 person operations, all the way to boards of Fortune 50s, and the C-suite of Fortune 50s. There is a universal threat of loneliness in positions of leadership.
Yeah.
And it's something that I applaud as a society. I think we're a little bit more conscious of, and wanting to make sure that every leader is equipped to handle that.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that the culture of Northern Colorado blesses us with is kind of a general, and maybe there's other places that have a similar culture, but we want the other people to all succeed too.
Yeah.
Yes, we want to get ours and find success and get our customers and stuff. And we want that for everybody that tries hard and delivers a good service and a good product.
Kurt, I see this play out every single day in our chapters. And, you and I have been talking recently around this critical mass that the next level community is reaching. And, by midpoint this year, we'll probably have close to 40 different next level business owners. And the amount of collaboration and synergies and just willingness to work with each other that I see in that group is really unique.
Well, and being able to rein some of that experience and talent down within the smaller members and some of the key leaders within those organizations, that some of whom won't be there for long. They'll be leading some other organization sometime down the road or whatever. Yeah, it's a great fountain too. So let's actually, since we kind of delved into your other book, I guess we're still in kind of we went back to England for the PhD and stuff. So I hate to lose that trail necessarily. And we were going to talk about what Incite really does. Yeah. And who you serve and what that crew is all about. So let's go back there.
So Incite Performance Group is a really unique organization that I joined about 4 years ago, and now have the privilege of serving as president. We're at the end of the day, we're a team that helps organizations and leaders work on their business so that they can thrive in it. And the whole idea is, especially for growth-oriented firms, and for me, the common thread throughout my career, whether it's in my own businesses that I've run or now spending the majority of my time advising high-growth organizations, is how do you scale successfully? And every stage of growth brings with it certain challenges that make that next stage of growth harder to obtain. But particularly for what I'll call, sort of the lower end of the middle market, as businesses start to mature into the middle market, this is an area that becomes really challenging. How do I, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, pull myself out of the day-to-day enough that I can spend the time needed working on the business? So we have a range of coaching and tools and resources and advisors that help companies do that.
So it's kind of a collective of advisors. I suppose, doing things under a common brand. And at one time you were kind of focused on the insurance industry, but that doesn't sound like that's so necessarily.
We are still primarily, I would say that is our core. It is expanded within that group quite a bit. But we have really grown outside of that vertical as well, and now have a range of industries that we serve.
That's cool. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And are you delivering kind of custom products and stuff? Or are you kind of like LoCo Think Tank is kind of exploratory, addressing issues as they come, but do you have like the Incite performance toolkit or whatever.
Yeah, at the end of the day, one of the things we tell our team all the time is we're an intellectual property business, right? So one way to think about it is people will pay us for advice, but the way that we actually prefer to think about it is you're paying us for results at the end of the day. And so we will stop at nothing to help you get those results. And one of those strategies is developing a core set of tools and resources that address core needs that we know exist
common within your industry, whatever.
Yep. But then in another sense, every client is unique, and so every plan that we would put in place with the client and execute is customized.
Yeah. It's not like do it our way, but here's a framework that we've found a lot of success.
Yeah. A little bit of both, I would say. Yep.
Interesting. And how do you find enough time to manage these 2 chapters of LoCo Think Tank? Because you go and talk from stages at conferences and stuff. Is that as part of your Incite role?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
My role at Incite encompasses certainly an internal team leadership management component. We are an incredibly this is a team where we are always trying to hire and find new talent that just continues to raise the bar of the caliber of our team. And our CEO, the co-author in the book, Larry Linne, that's been part of his DNA from day one. So like with a lot of people listening, I'm sure, wear multiple hats, and it starts with really, for me, clarity around what is most important in life and how can I make sure my priorities and my values are in place to achieve the desired outcomes. Whether we're talking about a job or leading a family, that's really for me where it starts is, along with my wife, Anna, we are just so blessed to live in a community that keeps us really grounded and engaged.
Well, and we'll talk more about family later, but you got a fresh foster child in your world this year.
Yeah, we just felt like raising 3 young kids was it was just getting too boring, too easy.
2 next level chapters, an Incite thing. And,
so let's throw in an infant foster child to the system.
I'm pretty visual in the way that I imagine things sometimes, and I hadn't really thought of you as a spout before, but in a way, like Incite Performance Group is collecting all this knowledge by working with all these middle market companies that are generally a notch or 2 notches bigger than the next level chapter members around here.
Yeah.
And then you've got that collection spout, so you can just kind of pour in some of that knowledge or innovation. Here's what some of the things that are working in these other businesses.
Yep.
How's that work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where at this point in my career, I've looked back and I'm at a point where I can look back and appreciate more than anything the variety. I don't know that anyone would at the outset of a career choose what seems like all these eclectic different paths.
Yeah.
But it has through a lot of trial and error and a lot of times for me it's making mistakes and learning what doesn't work, have been able to see a certain vista that it sort of extends out across industries, across company sizes. And as you and I know, at the end of the day, leading a business is about leading people and empowering people.
Well, that seems like a good transition to leading performance because it can't be managed. I was just sharing with you that I was about a chapter and a half into your book when my messenger bag got stolen here about 6 weeks ago before Christmas, and so I never finished it. But I think the title in some ways says it all, right? Leading performance because it can't be managed. You can't really manage people into success very well.
Yeah, you're exactly right. This title is very specifically chosen, as I hope most book titles are, Because it smacks us in the face, hopefully, with this paradigm shift that Larry and I argue has been underway now for a while. So one of the biggest mistakes I see leaders making is expressing very genuine frustration around how difficult it is to hire and retain and develop talent.
Yeah.
And chalking all that up to COVID.
Right.
So,
or to kids these days.
Exactly.
Or whatever. Meanwhile, they're not working at all on trying to understand what the experience of working for that company or enterprise in that role is.
Yeah. What we're seeing today manifested is really, I think, the result of a very complex set of trends that certainly were accelerated coming out of COVID, but they were there well before.
For sure.
And the basic idea of the book is how, as a business leader, whether you're a business owner or you're leading a large team in a Fortune 500, or you're a startup.
Yeah.
Autonomy is one of the most critical success factors for developing people and leading people. But it's a success factor that fundamentally challenges how most people grew up being led and approaching leadership.
Yeah.
Which means that you have to get it right.
Well, you have to soft play them into it too, in the case of some people.
Yeah.
Like I'm a delegate and autonomy kind of guy with my staff and stuff. Alma's boss left about a week after she was hired, and I was like, I don't really know how to do the newsletter, but it goes out in 2 weeks, So, but Rory left great notes. And sometimes some people are very uncomfortable with that, and that's probably because it's too loose, not enough direction and stuff sometimes. But on the other hand, some people really thrive within that. Yeah. Oh, he's let me own my whole job, know?
Yeah. So even what you're saying right there, I hear comments like that all the time, and that's why we eventually Larry and I said, we just have to write about this, because these are sets of challenges that we are dealing with every day in our advising work, and we're seeing play out across industries. And oftentimes they start as pain points for a business owner around, look, people just keep demanding more flexibility in where they work, in how they work, in this hybrid work world, and I don't know how to lead these people, and so I think if we take a step back and think about, look, in general, choice and freedom are things that I think most of us really value.
Yeah.
Whether we're a business owner or we're on the other end, we just started off in our careers.
Right.
In general, I think it's fair to say we're a society that values choice and freedom. So having choice and freedom in your work can be a really powerful growth factor. Meaning, we have a range of studies that show that to the degree that the right amount of choice and freedom are given to a person in their work, they're going to be more engaged. They're going to
come up with new ideas because they're
going to be more innovative. They're going to be more creative. But you heard me say, to the degree that there's the right amount.
Yeah.
So what is that? Is it just up to chance? Is it just random?
Yeah.
Or is there an actual structure and way to think about it? And what we outline in the book is a way to think about optimizing this difficult balance at times between, on the one hand, giving people more autonomy, but on the other, precisely because of that autonomy, that choice and freedom in how they do their work, they need that much more clarity about what's expected of them.
Mm-hmm. Is your process kind of custom? Like, is it a one size fits all on finding the guardrails, if you will, on that? Or do you have a little different, do different people deserve and expect a different approach to that amount of choice and freedom they have.
Yeah.
And direction.
It's a good question. I think every person's different. So in one sense, there needs to be an allowance for what's the best fit for this person. However, human beings are also predictably different.
Right.
And so there are some universals. And here's what I believe, Kurt. I don't care what position you're in, how experienced you are, what field you're in, what degrees you have or don't have, what training and experience you have and don't have. We all want to show up to a workplace where three things are true. Number one, we're doing things that we enjoy. Number two, we're doing things that we're good at. And number three, we're doing things that we know are contributing value.
Yeah.
The old way of what has been called in other parlance and even other recent books that have come out, the command and control environment of sort of traditional management styles, they don't put a focus on those three things.
Yeah.
Right? If those three things happen, okay, great. But what I'm really concerned about as a manager,
what are the results?
Is I wouldn't even say that. As a manager under a traditional approach, it's obedience.
Did
and
they follow
control.
the process
exactly
correctly?
Yeah. So what that does is it actually puts an emphasis in the wrong place, which is on activity. Are my people doing the right things?
Yeah. Are you turning the crank when I'm paying you?
Yep.
Just make sure you turn that crank. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And where those three elements really flourish is when we have an environment that shifts the emphasis away from activities towards outcomes.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm responsible to achieve in my role.
Yeah.
Here's the values we have as an organization. Go and accomplish these things, Drew or Kurt, in the way that you see best fit. And I'm here as your leader to coach you.
Yeah.
We're gonna regularly be in dialogue about progress you're making, challenges you're running into. We've got a quantifiable set of metrics that are guiding us to say, regardless of what you are or are not doing, regardless of where you're working and when you're showing up to work, these are the things that we're measuring success on.
Yeah.
And we're going to stay in regular communication about that.
I just had the walk back to the office. Alma and I had an appointment together this afternoon, and I was checking in with her. And it's so spot on because Deb, as you know, has done our billing and collections and different things, onboarding for a long time, and she had heart surgery 2 weeks ago or something, and she's recovering well. She's in rehab. She can't wait to get back to work. And we had just done this price change on most of our memberships and trying to switch from credit card billing to ACH. I think we had 27 out of 103 members that had finished their thing when Deb went in for surgery. And it was like, well, Alma, we're going to have to shift some of your time to like working on this project because you're better suited than me by far to figure out our Stripe billing and collection, these ACH setups. And you know, she was just expressing how she spends so much time, you know, figuring out clips for the podcast and different things that she's always kind of has to think and going through these one at a time. And okay, is this one checked off? It was just easy, you know, and it was something that she found joy in having, you know, stretches of time that were just kind of easy. She's good at it because she's super organized. She probably will improve upon Deb's process by the time she's back. And it mattered. You know, it was super important for us to collect our dues, you know. So we just had that conversation and I can see even just from that little microcosm how significant it was.
Sure.
Excuse me. So I guess any other major observations from the book, or I've got looks like about 5 copies here. If you want a copy of Drew's book, just come by here. I'll give the first 3 copies away to the people if they say, I heard you on the podcast.
Love
Can I
it.
get Drew's book?
Love
Or
it.
you can write me on LinkedIn
Yes.
or Instagram or something too.
Love it.
So can I find that anywhere?
Yeah, you can. It's on Amazon. We've got an audio book. A fellow Next Level member, Jonna, helped her and her husband and her team helped put together the audio book.
Okay.
So-
Did you read it yourself? Or
No, Larry read it.
Larry read it?
And
Okay, good.
Larry's got a great
Okay, good.
audio voice.
Because it's super
So-
lame when authors don't read their book,
right.
or at least
That's right.
one of the authors. So
yeah.
that's good.
I would say ultimately what this is a field guide to help any person who's in a leadership role know how to balance these tensions we're talking about. It's a path forward. And it's the most exciting thing about the book, as Larry and I have been doing quite a bit of speaking on it recently, is that the path towards clarity is pretty simple. We lay out what we call a performance objective framework, a way to take any person in any position and in basically 3 steps, give that person clarity about what's expected of them, and then a pathway for autonomy in terms of how they can achieve those results.
Oh, that's great. Are they on an island then once they get that autonomy?
In what sense?
Once you have autonomy on,
Yeah.
hey, my results are mine, then do you check in again? Does it get reset kind of from time to time? Because people grow. That's one of the reasons it's so important that businesses keep growing is you got to give your awesome people something to grow into.
So this is one of the major differences with, we're simplifying concepts, right? As we always do in business. But one of the major failures of traditional approaches to management is it was a static, once a year, maybe twice a year.
This is the job description. This is what you're hired to do.
And you've got your annual performance review.
Right.
And if you need it, it's out there. There are countless studies that have shown just how not just unproductive but damaging that system can be. Now, I'm not against
you should have job descriptions.
I'm not against job descriptions or annual performance reviews. If that's all that you have, they're relatively worthless. So we need to shift from a static environment to a dynamic environment where, to your question, there are regular checkpoints built in so that you as a leader have clarity as to how a person is tracking. And if I've got 10, 15 direct reports, I need that to be fairly efficient.
Right.
And I need a system that enables me to kind of get that spot.
You can't
check.
have 12 different dashboards for 12 different people.
Right. And then for the person being led, this is a way for you to now have a whole different lens into your boss. Ultimately, your boss is responsible to help you achieve the outcomes that you have agreed upon in collaboration with him or her. You want to achieve.
I like it. So it's really ultimately kind of looking for that win-win-win.
Yep,
like
absolutely.
How can I make this role, this function that our company needs, into a role that you find a lot of value and a direction that's going to take you to your next place.
Yep.
Hopefully with this organization, maybe not.
Yep.
Probably don't say it that overtly, but that's part of the truth sometimes.
It's
right?
a big reason why this paradigm shift. I tell business owners all the time, you resist this shift at your own peril because there are now more options available than perhaps ever before in recent memory for great people to find great jobs.
Yeah. Oh, it's so easy.
So if they're not finding it at your company, they're likely going to find it somewhere else.
I've had a number of members, especially because that's why I hear the story or whatever, where they've got a key employee that gives 6 months notice, and the owner is like celebrates their departure because they're going on to this amazing new opportunity that was made available by some of the growth that they did with and for their company. And that looks good but you know who it really impacts? The other employees that are still there, and they're like, Bob didn't get crazy when Susan said she was leaving. He asked her to stay for an extra month, so here's her replacement could get hired, and she wanted to because she cares about the organization.
Yeah, and I would say, that's going to happen. But with this framework and this path that we lay out, one of the things that we have found is that it actually puts an emphasis on retaining and developing talent with challenging, aspirational, meaningful goals, right?
Yeah.
That's part of the performance objective framework.
Part of my job as your boss is to grow you and challenge you.
Yes. And so if we can do that well, then we tend to have people that are more engaged in their work.
Challenge me, giving me more responsibilities and increase my pay regularly, and I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, why would I look
you're not a
somewhere
jerk.
else? Yeah.
Cool. Because ultimately people leave bad bosses as much as not. But if you're one of the reasons that you can be a good boss is by being in tune with what your people actually want.
That's right.
So,
yep.
yeah.
And that's very difficult to do in a once a year annual quote unquote performance review.
For sure. I'm ready for a short break. Do you mind if we do that? The LoCo Experience is sponsored by InMotion, providing next day delivery for local businesses. If you need anything delivered in Northern Colorado, InMotion's flat fee service is a great resource for your business. Delivering from the Wyoming border to Denver and anywhere in between, their clients range from small breweries to real estate companies. InMotion can deliver almost anything you can imagine. If this fits a need for your business, contact InMotion directly by emailing them at inmotionnoco@gmail.com. That's INMOTIONNOCO@gmail.com, and mention you heard it on the LoCo Experience. So one of the things I wanted to brush on before we leave kind of innovation and leading performance and things like that, we did an exercise last year where we talked about like adjacent revenues and different things. And it was really part of scaling and picking low-hanging fruit a little bit as a business. Can you recap that little ditty a little bit? Because it was actually quite impactful, and it honestly, it had a lot to do with the way we operated LoCo in 2022 and our growth this year.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, it's kind of a parallel discussion to, we were just talking about this massive paradigm shift within leadership, away from a traditional way of thinking about it to a new way. And similarly, in the world of business strategy, which I have spent all of my career in a variety of different ways on strategy. It's an area that I really love and have a passion around. So in traditional business strategy, you have to pick a growth path, right? And there's basically, if you want to be the low price leader, exactly,
or something,
or a niche player, or some hybrid of those two.
Okay.
Over the last, I would say, decade, and then substantially coming out of COVID, one of the things that now a lot of small to medium-sized enterprises have recognized that large conglomerates have known for a long time is the value of optionality, the value of multiple revenue streams, right?
And the number of vertically integrated businesses that I've met over the last 10 years is crazy different.
Yeah. So the question becomes, okay, if I've got this core business, and yes, I want to continue to fine tune this core revenue that I'm generating. I'm not going to
deliver the right widget at the right price.
I'm not going to neglect it. I'm not going to move away from it. I'm going to continue to keep it strong. What else is there? That can be an incredibly challenging question to answer. And it helps to have a framework to think about your options. And one of those options is what we call an adjacency.
Yeah.
An adjacency, if you think about, this is really easy to draw, as you've seen me do several times in a 2x2. But if you just think about your core business today, and you've got two different variables. You've got your client base, your customer base, your products and services, So we call that basically where you play.
Okay. Yep. Your existing sandbox.
What segments are you in? Okay. And then the other set of variables is how you win where you play. So these are your assets, your unique,
your special sauce.
Yeah, your resources.
Yeah.
So for any business, they're going to have a current set of markets, clients, customers, and assets. An adjacency is pivoting either one of those so that you're not venturing into brand new territory necessarily, but you're pivoting just enough to capture something that might be right alongside your core business.
Yeah, yeah.
So 2 different ways you could easily do this or think about it is offer what you currently offer to your core customer to someone else.
Right.
Is there someone else out there that I'm not currently serving that I could take what I currently offer to my core customer?
Right.
The other way to think about it is, what else does your core customer need that you're not offering?
Right.
Right. So,
and maybe your assets can even do some of those things.
That's right. Yeah. So at the most simplistic level, that's the way to start thinking about growth strategy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once you identify a couple of different paths, then you can start thinking through, okay, how would I act in those areas? One of the keys for understanding what makes growing an adjacency fundamentally different than growing your core business is the power of experimentation. So if you think about it, it makes sense, right? In our core business, we're primarily dealing with known variables.
Sure.
The name of the game in your core business, if you're an established manufacturing company and you manufacture office desks,
okay,
right? And you own that space and you're good at it.
Yeah, you got 27% market share or whatever.
And it's profitable. The name of the game in growing that core business specifically is incremental improvement.
Sure.
Right? And that's doable because most of the environment is dealing with known variables to you.
Yeah.
That's how you got to be really good at that.
Pick up more new customers that are distributing your desks or whatever, then you lose and you know, get your prices find your sourcing a little bit more margin.
Yep. Now, an adjacency is different. We are now talking about relatively unknown areas.
Yeah.
And we are not going to be able to make decisions in the same way necessarily. So is there more risk that comes with exploring an adjacency? Initially, potentially, yes. But for some businesses, it's their lack of exploring an adjacency that ultimately killed them.
Yeah.
You know, the history of capitalism is littered with these types of stories, probably none more famous than Kodak, who had the original digital imaging technology in their own R&D department.
Right.
And precisely because they perceived that, rightfully, by the way,
as a threat
to their core business, they killed it.
Yep.
And what they didn't think through was, number one, who else out there would potentially develop this and deploy it against us?
Mm-hmm.
And number two, could we take this and pivot into an adjacency that could turn this into an opportunity?
Could have been far more lucrative, yeah.
Right. So when I was in my corporate strategy days working with the firm you mentioned, this really unique firm based out of Chicago, we specialized in innovation strategy. So a large Fortune 500 would hire us and our team with the idea that they want to disrupt themselves before someone else does.
Yeah.
So experimentation is absolutely critical because in an adjacency, you are having to run a series of experiments that are structured properly and control for downside risk. Now, the thing to realize, the insight there is that's when done well, that is actually the cheapest and safest way to explore an adjacency.
Right. Well, I was just thinking to myself about a couple of examples. Our other next level facilitator, Kim O'Neill with Encompass Technologies, they were a beverage distribution company, logistics company,
Yep.
effectively early on,
Yep.
and then they just kept adding layers and layers. So it's all the way to the end retail.
Yep.
The producers of wines and beers now
Yep.
use their software. It's got financial tools, billing
Yeah.
tools, all these
Yeah.
things, and most of their growth was really from expanding a little bit at a
Good
time
point.
into adjacent markets.
Good point.
Or the other thing I thought of was pumping sewer water when there wasn't any frack water to pump
That's right.
with Emily's company.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah.
we talked about that. I was like, man, you must need a lot of those pumps. And it's like, no, not when it's at 200 PSI. That sewer water moves really fast. So
Yeah.
anyway, and there's a lot of other examples. So, well, thanks for sharing that. I know we've got a deadline. You've got a foster kid to pick up. So let's
right.
let's jump into the closing segment, shall we?
We shall.
Faith. One of the things I was thinking about is, do you have a longing to, or maybe you are using your PhD in religion and kind of
Yeah.
your training in capitalism meets Christianity stuff?
Yeah.
Are you already using that, or do you have a longing to shepherd a church someday or be a professor at a university? Like all those things.
Yeah. So I've, for the better part of my career, I've kind of had both feet planted in two different worlds, and I've come to really embrace that as such a blessing from God. So one foot is, my day job is in a variety of different ways, as we've discussed in the business world. But I also have a foot really firmly planted in theology and the study and the pursuit of faith. And that expresses itself in teaching that I do. I have been an adjunct professor of theology, and then I teach a variety of different courses. And also,
I think you're on the board with the Denver Institute there, right?
Yep, involved with many organizations and also churches, and starting with my local church here in northern Colorado. And I have come to see the intersection of these two worlds as a really fascinating and valuable place that nourish kind of both sides.
Yeah, for sure.
Never getting too immersed in business that I neglect to remember that at the end of the day, business is people, and people are values.
Yeah.
And also never getting so immersed in the theoretical and conceptual landscape of academic theology or ministry leadership that I forget that people have real practical needs, and they need to wake up and go to work every day and love their families and do all the things that we as human beings need to do.
Recover from earthquakes and all those things, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about the faith environment today? There's a lot of, if you read the Twitter or anything like that, there's a lot of, like somebody posted the other day, why are people getting all freaked out about the Grammys thing? Do people actually think Satan is real? And comments?
The faith environment, obviously it's a very broad idea. I would say it this way. I think we're feeling the pains as a society of asking and trying to answer really important and valuable questions through entirely the wrong mediums.
Even 244 characters at a shot isn't going to get to the bottom of what is the meaning of life,
right? Exactly, and it's that and so much more, right? At the end of the day, to have a meaningful conversation with another human being around what matters requires a certain environment and commitment, and openness and trust and transparency and all these things that are really difficult to accomplish in the world in which we live. And if we look back at the life and teachings of Jesus, someone that I've committed my life to and try to follow day in and day out, however imperfectly I do that. This is someone who spent a lot of time wandering mostly rural and poor communities, having conversations, truly conversations with everyday people where primarily he's asking questions. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's
just like me. I like to think of myself as a lot like Jesus when I'm doing this podcast.
Okay.
Jesus with mezcal.
Oh, you know what? You said it, not me. So.
I didn't really say it either.
We'll edit that. I'm sure we'll edit that portion out if you're not already struck dead by a lightning bolt by that time.
Only if I'm still alive. Let's edit this part out. Well, I think that's actually very thoughtful, and I think, only a very relatively small proportion of the country, for example, really takes the time to examine those questions.
Yeah.
Almost you're a 1%er at least, or a half of a 1%er in terms of the amount of time you've spent studying. But I'm probably a 1%er because I, thought about it for a while, came to faith in, my late 20s or whatever, did some study and did some things. And I don't know how to say it, but it's surprising to me how many people don't decide to take on that question and investigate it, I guess. And why do you think that is?
I think one major reason is time.
Yeah.
And what I would say is a misperception of time. We see studies all the time, right? That come out of Nordic countries primarily, where there's this correlation between quality of life and people's happiness and what we might say is a more balanced approach to how we spend our time. It's very difficult to reflect on and think about the deep things of life if you don't have time to reflect on and think about the deep things of life.
And that doesn't mean some of those people that don't have time have, 6-figure jobs and, boats and 2 houses and a Corvette in the garage. It's a matter of making time sometimes as well. But there isn't space.
Yeah, and the other thing to go along with that, another major variable is, I would say, this is part of, I think, one of the excesses of capitalism.
Yeah, the freedom kind of thing. God's going to put handcuffs on me, and he doesn't want me to buy a Corvette.
Well,
maybe.
And maybe there's a very notable intellectual, David Brooks, a columnist with the New York Times, who I highly respect and regard. He talks about, and we actually talk about this in our Next Level groups quite a bit, right? Our purpose statement in Next Level is to catalyze holistic growth for ourselves, our companies, and our communities to always be better. Holistic growth means we don't just pay attention to what David Brooks calls the resume virtues.
Yeah.
All those things that any one of us, especially entrepreneurs, are going to have to be and want to be focused on. But if we're only focused on those to the neglect of what we would call what David Brooks calls the eulogy virtues. These are the things that people are saying about us, hopefully, when we're gone.
Yeah.
And, he has many wonderful books, but if you were to only read one, listeners, read The Second Mountain.
Okay.
And the whole idea of The Second Mountain came out a couple years ago is this insight he had in talking to a lot of successful people who were not happy.
Yeah.
And a common theme he found in their lives is they thought the resume virtue was the mountain to climb. Yeah. And so they spend so much of their life accumulating wealth and, for a lot of people, running people over in the process. only to discover that that's only the first mountain. And the more significant one is the second mountain. And it's the harder one to climb. And that's really an answer to the question of not what have I achieved? It's an answer to the question of what type of person am I?
Yeah. Well, I applaud your willingness to get a chapter around that kind of notion of holistic. And it's so in line with LoCo's values that kudos on that.
Well, it's easy to do, so to speak, when you're surrounded by the types of business owners that we have in these groups and the value systems that drive them.
Yeah, no, and I, as I don't know about disclaimer, LoCo Think Tank isn't a religious organization, and we're probably less than half identifying Christians, I suspect. I don't know, but my faith values are within the fabric of how we do things, and I think that's, hopefully people will recognize you by how you treat them, not what you say about God.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to talk about family a little bit. You've got 3 youngsters, and then a new foster kid. What are the ages of your littles these days?
Yeah, my amazing wife, Anna, and I are blessed with 3 biological kids. I've got my oldest daughter, Emery. I've got a middle daughter, Allegra. And then my youngest son, biological son, is Kempton.
And what's the age range on those kids?
11 to 6.
Okay.
Yep, so we're in the throes of it and just are surrounded by amazing community, a lot of which is my family.
Right.
And my wife's family here in Colorado. And we really get the benefit of
lots of cousins, lots of uncles and aunts and grandmas and whatever.
And everything, yeah. And then we were in the process of seeking to adopt a sweet little boy that we've been fostering now for almost a year.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
And so he's like a year old. He was just a baby virtually when you got him.
He's coming up on 16, 17 months. And we got him when he was 7 months.
And what's his name?
I won't share it just because I know how widely distributed this podcast is.
Huge many listeners.
And, Kurt.
Well, it's an active conversation with the state and trying to adopt and stuff like that. So that's
in all seriousness, there is an element of that. But
would you share a one-word description for this young boy?
Oh my word! If I could only choose.
He's only 16 months, so it's probably tough. But.
I mean, a word that immediately comes to mind is amazing.
Yeah. And
the second word would be, well, why is he amazing? Resilient. I mean, this is a young kid, like many kids in our community, and it's so easy to overlook, right, Kurt?
Yeah.
You're involved with an amazing organization, Realities for Children, or Matthew's House. Sorry.
Well, both. I'm an ambassador for both.
Right.
Yeah. I was just meeting with Craig the other day and talking about the scope of neglect and abuse.
Yes.
It's like doubled in 5 years or 4 years.
It's unbelievable. And you and I have talked about this. I mean, there's, one of the things we're going to be unveiling and developing this year within this next level community is a way for us to take our collective weight as a business community and make an impact exponentially in a range of issues that we know matter to our community.
I've got a couple of interesting ideas that might be worth talking about offline for that also that come to mind.
Awesome.
And then last thing on the family I wanted to talk about a little bit. I wore my pink shirt today as a kind of a cancer awareness thing, and we lost a member of the LoCo Think Tank family here about a month ago in Emily Kincaid, and it's been pretty impactful. I had lunch with Pete last week, and we were just talking about things in life and perspective when somebody so young and so vibrant is taken from us. And can you give some perspective on that in the context of peer advisory as family that you choose a little bit and stuff? How was that? How was that to lead the group through that?
Yeah.
And just be in communication with us.
One of those experiences in life that you never expect and you never want to go through, but also shows, if I can use the word, beauty that you would never otherwise see. And we are still very much as a next level community, as a chapter in the midst of processing this, because part of what made this situation so stunning is the timeline.
Yeah.
You know, I sat down with Emily in one of our regular one-on-ones, now just over 60 days ago.
Yeah.
And she just shared with me in passing, hey, I've got this medical procedure. I'm actually really excited because the doctors,
I've had some pain. And
I've had some pain. I thought it was food related. And so I'm going in tomorrow. And I said, okay, yeah, great. We'll be thinking of you. And, neither one of us thought anything else until I got an email from her that following Monday, and stage 4 cancer.
Yeah.
And here we are, you and I, 60 days later, talking about her having left this earth.
Yeah.
And so I can't think of, and you heard me say this to our group when we were meeting for the first time after her passing. I can't think of someone who embodies at such an incredibly young age this whole idea of having both resume and eulogy virtues. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what made Emily so remarkable is that she was able to achieve so much in the right way at such a young age.
Yeah. It is really incredible, actually. So cheers, Emily.
Cheers, Emily.
We'll remember you forever.
Yep.
Who wants to talk about politics? Not me, Drew says. I don't know why I didn't grab the tissues and bring it up here before. I knew I was going to bring it up.
Maybe we just better skip the politics part.
Well, we got the State of the Union address tonight. What would you say the state of our union is?
Oh my word!
On a national stage. Well, I'm kind of shocked that we haven't seen a more significant recession or something by now with all these interest rates and things like that. And now the jobs report comes out, we're hiring like drunken sailors still, and the Fed's like, damn it, I'm trying to soft land this economy. Like, what's going on? Like, is it just kind of the after effects of all that money printing is still just slushing around, or do we just not have to worry about recessions anymore?
You won't hear me say much about politics because I'm deeply Anabaptist in my approach to the political realm. At the end of the day, like, I have so much respect truly for a good, sound, values-driven political leaders, and values-driven meaning whether they share my sense of the Christian faith or not, whether they're raging atheists or Buddhists. It's, people that can lead well effectively in the political realm, they're rare.
And not be corrupted by the sauce.
Absolutely. They're rare. And so I honor and respect them. But at the same time, I've just seen other avenues of addressing important issues as being far more effective and productive, to put too much stock in the political avenue.
Fair.
All that to say, back to your question, here's the challenge, Kurt. History is our guide. I'm a big believer in that.
For sure.
History isn't a great guide in times that are relatively unprecedented.
Right.
We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know a lot of what the after effects, the perhaps unintended consequences are of these decisions that, I think in general, I'm someone that I call myself a rational optimist. Okay. Every situation has a little bit of good and bad, and it might vary in the percentage breakdown. I can always choose to focus on the good.
Yeah.
So even in times like this, I want to focus on the good, and I do think that we've got, some really bright minds that are at the front lines, making tough decisions.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's going to be the right decision.
Do you think that the World Economic Forum just kind of wrapped up and, historically has had kind of a positive light about, it's these extra smart people that are trying to guide the world into a new, more responsible, more sustainable future. And now, like with Twitter being a mayhem land again and stuff like that, there's a lot of contrary opinions that are like, if your local candidate is a World Economic Forum graduate, don't vote for them and run into their car if you can, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about that dynamic?
I think in general, generalizations don't get us very far. And so, interestingly, I guess
as power develops and corrupts, other power will develop to offset it.
Yeah, and I don't know. At the heart of it is Davos sort of this like elite peer community, peer group.
Totally
community,
right.
We just haven't been invited yet.
Right.
It'll come.
You might. I don't think I ever will.
You'll be my plus one.
They'll go listen to some of my past podcasts.
Yeah,
check him twice on the gun check.
So all that to say, I think that there could be a lot of good reasons why someone would go to that, and probably a lot of subpar reasons. But
it seems like extra
action.
frat boy, like the bad frat house.
Yeah,
except
it's a really nice frat house.
It's super nice, but they get kind of rapey sometimes and stuff.
No comment. I'm not even.
I'm not gonna take that bait.
I'm not even sure that's a word. So.
Sure it is. Yeah, you know what I meant, right?
All right.
Anyway, do you have a LoCo experience to share? We always share a crazy experience. Now, we didn't have this segment at the end of our show last time, but it's a crazy or unusual experience from your lifetime that you're willing to share with our audience. The craziest, if you're willing. But do you have any crazy experiences in that kind of young Christian, studious, business geek, nerd kind of guy? You got some bad stories out there.
Oh, wow.
Your wife told me that you do have a dark streak somewhere.
Well, I will, because you said you're kind of an image, visual person. Okay?
Yeah.
So I want you to imagine young Drew.
All right.
In his early college years.
Okay.
Man, this next couple of sentences is going to go so against my core. But I'm doing this for you, Kurt.
Okay, I like it.
I want you to imagine young Drew completely naked, ankle deep in a freezing, fast-flowing river in Japan.
Oh.
Alongside other freezing and naked males.
Okay.
That are scrambling to try to find my glasses.
Were you in the hot springs nearby or something? And then
So one of the things that it truly has been an enormous blessing in my life and a huge value is travel.
Yeah.
I've been to over 45 countries and counting.
Cool.
And that started at a really young age. And what a privilege. Like, most people don't get that opportunity. And it's something that, I do like to say the vast majority of those are not the 5-star glitz and glamour places on the earth. I have been to some of the poorest places in the globe amidst those travels. But all that to say, this was a particular trip. I had an opportunity to go to Japan right before my freshman year of college. I was heavily involved and still am in a ministry called Young Life.
Oh, sure. And
the Northern Colorado director of Young Life at the time, a spiritual mentor in my life, had asked me and a couple of friends to go with him to help launch backcountry ministry, a backcountry program at this partner organization in Japan. So, I mean, we got to experience some really incredible things, did some intense backpacking. And on this, it was towards the end of the trip. We were sort of like, carefree and
you had bonded already,
and ready to head home in a couple of days. And I had contacts at the time. I had LASIK now, but at the time I had contacts, and over the course of this trip, my eyes had really dried out. So my contacts just were worthless. I was wearing glasses.
Sure.
And you don't have a backup pair of glasses in Japan, nor can you just go to the local Walgreens and get the, a prescription. So my friend had the idea of, all right, to celebrate this amazing trip, we're going to go into this river that was near our base camp, and we're all going to do a dive.
Do a little polar plunge action.
Yeah. It was polar for sure. Because the second I went under, I froze. And my glasses came off because the river was so fluid.
Yeah.
So I'm up, and I can't see a thing. And, all of a sudden, people see what's going on, and they start looking for my glasses. And I tell everyone, like, don't even worry, but there's no way we're going to find these. And one guy, by the grace of God, literally is just kind of like feeling around, pulls his hand out, and he's got my eyeglasses in his hand.
And they were not stepped on? They were
nothing.
That's
nothing.
Crazy.
So,
well, that's a pretty crazy experience.
That was an adventurous trip.
Other English-speaking white kids that were part of this
trip?
It
was a mix. It was partly our group that we had brought over. And then what I'm sure are still to this day very scarred.
Well, they probably don't get much whiter than you.
Local Japanese,
red complexion and all that.
Local Japanese teenagers at the time.
That's pretty funny, though.
Who probably have perceptions of Americans now because of our
people
experience.
Are crazy, like that Drew guy.
So
you're awesome. Well, thanks for all of your awesome service to Northern Colorado, to your clients, to the foster care system, and this young man that's going to grow up in your household and be blessed by that. Any parting words for our listeners? Go buy the book, Leading Performance, on Amazon.
Great. Thank you. And if you are a listener and you are not involved in some way in LoCo Think Tank, I hope you get involved. And
unless you're lame, then you can just
let Kurt decide that.
We don't just take everybody, but yes.
But this is an amazing group. And Kurt, maybe you're not sick of hearing me say, I am so privileged to be a part of this community and these next level groups, and it is one of my highest callings. And it all started with an idea.
Yeah.
That this strange banker Kurt Baer had, and look what it is now. So what a privilege.
Honored and blessed all the time to work with so many people that are so much smarter than me.
Well, I'd like to meet them too someday. Okay?
Thanks, Drew. You're awesome.
Thank you for listening to this episode. This is Alma Ferrer, producer of the LoCo Experience podcast. If you enjoyed this program and would like to support the show, please share it with your favorite people and leave us a review. To see upcoming guests, behind-the-scenes footage, and more, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at The LoCo Experience. Subscribe to never miss the latest interview, and until next time, stay LoCo.